Hello and welcome to our look ahead to what the papers will be bringing us tomorrow. With us, broadcaster John Stapleton and Kate Proctor, editor of Politics Home and The House magazine. Welcome to you both. Nice to have you here. Tomorrow's front pages then, starting with the Eye. It says Boris Johnson's under pressure to open the door to more refugees amid continued Russian shelling of Ukraine. According to The Telegraph, Vladimir Putin has set out his demands in order to halt the invasion of Ukraine. The Times carries a picture of a woman who was partially blinded by a Russian shell. The paper says these shredded faces chart Mr. Putin's strategy better than any map. The Financial Times focuses on the market reaction to the crisis after calls for a ban on Russian crude led to volatility in oil and gas prices. The Daily Mail reports that the Prime Minister's drawing up a new energy supply strategy because of fears that household energy bills could hit £4,000. So all about Ukraine tonight again, as it won't surprise you to hear, but the paper's going in slightly different directions. The Financial Times, John, saying markets rattled by push for Russian crude ban as refugee crisis mounts. Brent crude, that all-important indicator, up and down a bit like a yo-yo.
Yes, it's $139 a barrel, I gather, at one stage today, the highest it's been for about 15 years. And this volatility all started after the United States indicated that it might be willing to ban imports of Russian crude oil, presumably going to somewhere like Saudi Arabia or Venezuela to make up the difference, although that would be not really without its complications. And that caused a great deal of volatility in the markets, as did a rise in gas prices as well. Boris Johnson came out of this 90-minute meeting with Mr. Biden and other Western leaders saying, well, we never thought we'd consider this, but maybe now on the agenda. And of course, other alternatives will have to be discussed as well, like, for example, more nuclear power for Great Britain, perhaps going back to renewables, something we can touch on when we look at the next paper. But yeah, clearly a major day on the markets, a greater deal of uncertainty, and all caused, of course, by the uncertainty in the Ukraine.
Yes, of course. It says as well on the subheading there, Kate, Berlin resists a bid to bar imports, explaining, showing once again that Germany is really quite sensitive to decisions that the international community might want to make. It's ploughing its own furrow in some regards.
They do appear to be a bit of an outlier on the international stage at the moment because they're so reliant on Russian gas, Russian energy supplies. They do appear to be, in tune with what Europe is saying, what the West is saying generally about the approach to Russia. But when it comes to this energy supply issue, it's very, very difficult for them. We're certainly not hearing from Germany a shift in the way that they might be able to do things. So Boris Johnson is saying perhaps we can look at other supplies, perhaps we can look at being more reliant ourselves, perhaps we'll look to the North Sea. And as John said just before, perhaps we'll look to renewables, but we're not hearing the same things from Germany. And they constantly seem to be the buffer in these discussions. There are only so many ways that you can hit Russia. The economic sanctions have been really severe. Energy sanctions or banning gas from Russia would be a really seismic thing to do. But I think unless you have Germany on board, it's going to be really difficult to have a coherent voice on it.
Daily Mail, though, Kate, saying new dash for gas to break Putin's grip, and that figure of energy bills in this country potentially hitting £4,000. I mean, that's a horrifying amount of money at a time when people are already worried about the cost of living.
Well, it's horrifying and it's completely unaffordable, I would imagine, for most families. You're going to see people in fuel poverty in absolutely no time. So all of this could have a big impact on the UK. And what Boris Johnson is setting out in the Daily Mail here is saying that we need to try and change our energy mix. And like I mentioned before, it's about looking to the North Sea, but also returning to some nuclear energy generation ideas. I mean, the Daily Mail is referring to a new generation of energy supply as mini nukes, which is a quick increase in nuclear power generation. I mean, I think the use of nukes is not a great word to be using right now, but that's the way the Daily Mail's presented it. But they are trying to show that the UK is trying to get on the front foot, try and make sure that the UK has an energy mix that is potentially affordable. And if we are, going to be hit by this Russian gas issue, that perhaps our own prices are, some families can be sheltered from those soaring costs.
Counterintuitive, though, John, to start doing more drilling in the North Sea when we're supposed to be heading towards net zero.
Well, absolutely. But, and none of this is, let's be honest about this, none of this is going to happen overnight, is it? We're not going to stop taking Russian gas tomorrow morning, even though we only have we only rely on about 4% of our supply from Russia. Other countries like Holland rely, and Germany rely on it much more. But none of this is going to happen tomorrow. But yes, you're quite right. It is at odds with our stated policy to return to renewables and change our energy policy altogether. But we are in a very dramatic and very different circumstances than we were in, say, even 2 weeks ago, never mind a month or a year ago. So yes, a change of strategy may well be the only answer if we're going to protect people's bills, because as you rightly say, I mean, the prospect of energy bills of £4,000 a year is going to be ruinous for the vast majority of people.
Yeah, utterly unaffordable, as Kate says. Kate, the Metro, pull your finger out. Well, actually, I think it's what Lord Dannatt, the former head of the army, said was extract the digit and let's get this done, slightly more classy. He's saying we should be taking far more refugees into the UK, Kate.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting story from the Metro, because you do have, the ex-head of the army saying that the UK has capacity to take Ukrainian refugees. And one of the interesting things he says here is, this comment was actually made to Sky News, but the Metro thought it was so good that they've decided to put it on the front page. He's saying, in the UK, we have a recruitment crisis, an employment crisis. There are jobs for people. I think he's trying to get across the message that we have capacity to take people from Ukraine. There are jobs available. And maybe, Britain's rhetoric around immigration, and particularly the way that the Home Office has tried to present things, we changed our entire immigration system to a points-based system, skills-based. And so I think we have this reputation right now. And I think, the ex-head of the army, Lord Dannatt, is saying, let's try and move away from that and just actually look at, what we can do to help people. He says the UK must be open-hearted. And I think it's a good message to have on the front page.
The Eye has also got a similar message as well, John. UK urged to help refugees. And one of the subheadings suggesting that the Foreign Secretary is blaming the Home Secretary for the problems of escapees trapped in Calais.
Well, we've had a farcical situation today with the Home Office, haven't we, Martine? Earlier in the day, or yesterday at least, the Home Office was saying we've granted just 50 visas out of the thousands of people from the Ukraine who applied to come here. Only 50 visas granted. The Home Secretary in the House of Commons then denied that, and also said she had people down in Dover to assist those, in Calais rather, to assist those who wanted to come across to the UK. Your Mark Easton was in Calais and established earlier in the day today that there was no one, at that time, there was no one there, and there was no visa application office there for people to go to. They were being told to go to either Paris or Brussels to get a visa to come to the UK, and many of them, despite her denials, were being turned back. Yet another chapter, I'm afraid, in the history of the Home Office failing to rise to the occasion. You remember John Reid, when he took over the Home Office during a Labour government, said the organisation wasn't fit for purpose, and it seems that nothing has changed. We now know tonight, we're now being told tonight that some 300 have been granted visa applications, but even that is tiny compared to, say, for example, the Republic of Ireland. They've granted 1,800 people visas to go and live there. Moldova, it was a tiny little country, was actually processing more people per hour than we've granted asylum to or visas to during the course of the last 2 weeks. So it really is a lamentable record, or many people would regard as a lamentable record. And Gary Lineker tweeted today, we've actually welcomed more Russian oligarchs than we have Ukrainian refugees.
And Poland taking about 1 million people. It's just.
Well, they would. In fairness, Poland's on the border, so they would.
It's true. That is true. Yep. The Daily Telegraph, though, John, Putin sets out his key demands to halt invasion as the progress of his forces is somewhat bogged down. I mean, tell that to the people who are being shelled, tell that to the people who've lost relatives. But there's a chink here of an opportunity. How realistic is it?
Hardly. I mean, did you see the proposals? I mean, what he was proposing that Ukraine should do would declare itself as a neutral state, stop any fighting, despite the fact that they're being attacked, declare itself as a neutral state, recognise Crimea as part of Russia, and recognise the eastern breakaway areas as Russian as well. I mean, they're never in a million years going to agree to that, are they? That's never, not a hope in hell of them doing that. Meanwhile, as you rightly say, the shelling continues, and their offer, I mean, you've got to take everything Putin says with a very, very, very large pinch of salt. I mean, these offers today of corridors of people to escape from Ukraine, 4 out of the 6 led to either Russia or Belarus. Well, why on earth would the people of Ukraine want to go back to Russia when Russia's just bombed them out of their own homes?
Exactly. The other point that's being made in here is that Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, is going to address the House of Commons tomorrow, Kate. I mean, that will be a big box office viewing, won't it? Because his speeches have become, an internet sensation.
Yeah, that's right. And the House of Commons is preparing by installing some really large screens so that it's not just going to be Zelensky up on the small TVs that we have in the House of Commons. It's going to be huge. They're going to try and slightly change the layout. And it was very emotional when the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK was given a standing ovation last week in the Commons. So I can only imagine how it's going to feel to be addressed directly from Zelensky. This is a really unusual thing to do. It's not something that I've seen during my time in Parliament, and he has a lot of support and a lot of fans, and I'm led to believe that him and Boris Johnson have a very close relationship. They're speaking very regularly on the phone, and I know that the MPs in Parliament as well will want to hear it, and the journalists already, we've been saying, we can't wait to get in the chamber tomorrow to hear what he has to say, because everything at the moment just feels so pivotal, so important, and you also just want to know how Zelensky's doing himself, because this is, it's going to be day 13 tomorrow, I think, and this is just such a harrowing and difficult time for him. So it's a bit of an honour, really, I think, for him to spare the time to talk to the UK Parliament.
Let's hope he's safe, because we hear that Russian forces are scouring the capital to try to find him. Just a quick comment about The Guardian. Kiev rejects Putin offer to let people flee into Russia, John. I mean, as you alluded to, why on earth would they trust him?
Exactly, and why on earth would they got those corridors, to back into Russia? The situation is very, very worrying indeed tonight. Let's be honest about it. I mean, there's been a slight sense of euphoria that the joy we've all expressed at the way in which Ukraine has defended itself and attacked back at Russia, and no doubt about it, halted the Russian advance. There's great joy that the West has united, 141 members of the United Nations, all united together to condemn what he's doing. But let's not get too excited about this. I mean, it's good news indeed, but there's not much to celebrate in Ukraine at the moment, not much to celebrate at all. They are, as you say, there's reports in one of the papers this morning, tonight rather, or tomorrow morning's papers, of death squads approaching Kiev to get the president of the Ukraine and his family. Those pictures, those harrowing pictures we're seeing of, old ladies, hobbling across on planks across rivers to escape, women with babies, the disabled, people sheltering in underground cellars of derelict houses without any power, without any water, without enough food, medical supplies running out in the hospitals. It's a dire situation. I mean, the worst situation we've had in the world since the Second World War. We thought we'd consign these images to history, but not so. And I have to tell you, I mean, I was on holiday last week, and I actually went away the day war broke out, not on purpose, I should add, by accident. I almost felt guilty being on holiday. I genuinely did. I almost felt guilty being on holiday, seeing these pictures of these poor people suffering in this way. It's unbelievable.
I think a lot of people will feel the same way. Next hour, we'll talk about a little girl who's captured the hearts of millions of people around the world with her rendition in Ukrainian of Frozen's theme, Let It Go. We'll talk about her in a minute. It's a little bright spot, but for the moment, that's it for the papers for this hour. We will be back again for another look at the front pages at 11:30. Join us then.